The hour of convening having arrived, all members of the House will report to the floor and take their seats. All members of the House will please report to the floor for the morning roll call. The clerk will ring the bell. All right, we're about to have the morning roll call. All members present will please vote green to signify their presence in the chamber, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? The clerk will lock the machines. Doorkeepers will please close the doors and keep them closed. We will begin our day with scripture reading and prayer by the chaplain, after which we will pledge allegiance to the flag of our country. Before I recognize the member to introduce the chaplain, I want to make you aware, some of you may not be, that one of our colleagues, Representative Bob Bryant, is having some health challenges. He is hospitalized in Savannah, and I'm going to ask you to please keep him in your prayers. Our chaplain this morning will be introduced by the gentleman from the 146th House District, Representative Shaw Blackman. Representative Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, fellow members of the House. Reverend Lindsay Napier, Sr., currently serves as the pastor of the Warner Robins CME Church in Warner Robins, and served as a minister in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church for over 39 years. Reverend Napier was born in Sylvester, Georgia, to the parents of the late Reverend Lonnie Napier, Sr. and Mary Jane Napier Parker. He is a graduate of Worth County High School. Upon completion from high school, he would go on to pursue a bachelor's degree at Payne College in Augusta, Georgia. He has a master's in divinity, a master's in education, and an education specialist degree. He's retired from the Twiggs County Public School System after 25 years. His ministry reaches beyond the walls of his church. I know Pastor Napier is a wonderful husband, parent, and grandparent, and he is an amazing steward of the gospel, who not only preaches the word of God, but is a shining example of how to live a godly life. And on a personal note, there's few people that we run into that you connect with and you know that will be a friend for life and a brother in Christ for life. So it is my honor and privilege to present my friend, Reverend Lindsay Philip Napier, Sr.
To Speaker Roston and my friend, Representative Shaw Blackman. The scripture reading for today is Psalms 1. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in the law doeth he meditate day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. Just for a few moments this morning, I want to talk to you to always be men and women of integrity. Greetings this morning to each and every one of you. Let me tell you a story I heard a long time ago. And it was a story told in church about a wealthy businessman who lay on his deathbed. His pastor came to visit and talked to him about God's healing power and prayed for his parishioners. When the pastor was done, the businessman said, "Preacher, if God heals me, I'll give the church $5 million. Miraculously, the businessman got better, and within a few short weeks was out of the hospital. Several months later, the pastor bumped into the businessman on the sidewalk and said, "You know, when you were in the hospital dying, you promised to give the church $5 million if you got well. We have not received that money as of yet." The businessman replied, "Did I say that? I guess that goes to show how sick I really was." Integrity. A person of integrity is validated by their words and their deeds. If we are pure in heart, we can be pure in action. Integrity is making my daily actions line up with my heart value. Mark Twain said, "Speaking honestly is better. It takes a lot of stress out of our lives." If you tell the truth, each of you who represents from all over the state of Georgia, you don't have to remember anything. But if you don't tell the truth, you have to remember what you said. Integrity provides us with security and great confidence. Proverbs 10:9 says, it informs us that a man of integrity walks securely, but he who takes crooked paths will be found out. Let me tell you another story quickly about integrity. A busload of politicians were headed to a convention, but because of the highway construction, they had to take a detour down a rural road. You know, me being from South Georgia, there's a lot of rural dirt roads down in my hometown. So the driver was having problems with this windy country lane. He lost control of the bus. It ran off the road and crashed into a tree in an old farmer's field. The old farmer was driving to town when he noticed that there was a gaping hole in his fence. He went to investigate. He saw what had happened. He went back to his truck, got his shovel, and buried all the politicians. Since the politicians never arrived at their destination, a state trooper was dispatched to locate them. He backtracked their route, followed the country road, and saw the wrecked bus in the field and looked up at the old farmer that owned the property. The trooper asked the farmer where the politicians had gone. The farmer informed the trooper that he had buried all of them. The trooper said, "They were all dead?" The old farmer replied, "Well, some of them kept saying they weren't, but you know how politicians are." I came this morning to tell you, young men and women of God, be men and women of integrity. So let your yes be yes and your no be no. Amen. Okay. Let us pray. O God and Heavenly Father, we come before you today to ask your forgiveness and seek your direction and guidance. Search us, O God, and know our hearts today. Cleanse us from every sin and set us free. Lord, guide us and bless these men and women who have been sent to direct us and create laws to the center of your will. God, you are the fountain of wisdom and truth. We ask that you guide and bless our representatives assembled here in the state of Georgia, that they may enact laws that will please you through Jesus Christ our Lord. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, send love upon each and every one that's here, each and every member, so that their districts will be districts of integrity. We ask that every member promote the well-being and serve all people, rich or poor, black or white, from southern states, from the southern counties of Georgia to the northern counties of Georgia. Lord, also bless our governor who will execute the laws created by these legislators. We openly ask these things in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I unlock the doors, I want to recognize on the floor of the House former State Representative Willie Talton. Willie Talton. Doorkeepers will unlock the doors. Chair recognizes Chairman Chokus, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Information and Audits has read the journals of the previous legislative day and have found them to be correct.
Chairman Chokus, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits, reports that the journal of the previous legislative day has been read and found to be correct. Is there any objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none and the journal is confirmed. The clerk will read the resolution establishing the order of business for the day.
Mr. Burns, 159th, moves the following be established as the order of business during the first part of the period. Unanimous consents. Introduction of bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions. Second reading of bills and resolutions. Report of standing committees. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions. Morning orders.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the resolution establishing the order of business for the day? The chair hears none and the resolution is adopted. First reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 1078 by Representative Kaiser, the 59th, Smith, the 41st, Smith, Stevens, the 165th, and Waits, the 60th. Bill be titled Act to amend Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to education.
Education.
House Bill 1079 by Representative Kaiser, the 59th. Bill be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 13 of Chapter 6 of Title 40 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to special provisions for motorcycles.
Motor vehicles.
House Bill 1080 by Representative Ramsey, the 72nd. A bill be entitled an act to authorize the Magistrate Court of Fayette County to impose and collect county law library fees.
Intergovernmental coordination.
House Bill 1081 by Representative Williamson, the 115th. Bill be entitled an act to amend an act to provide for a new charter for the City of Jersey.
Intergovernmental coordination.
House Bill 1082 by Representative Green, the 151st. Bill be entitled an act to provide a new charter for the City of Blakely.
Intergovernmental coordination.
House Bill 1083 by Representative Houston of the 170th, Perkle, the 155th, and Watson, the 172nd. Bill be entitled an act to amend an act creating and establishing the State Court of Tift County.
Intergovernmental coordination.
House Bill 1088 by Representative Clark of the 98th, Willard of the 51st, Holcomb of the 81st, Yates the 73rd, and Glanton the 75th, and others. Bill be entitled an act to amend Code Section 31-2A-18 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to the establishment of the low THC oil patient
Judiciary non-civil.
House Bill 1089 by Representative Beverly of the 143rd, Randall of the 142nd. Bill be entitled an act to amend an act to provide for the restructuring of the government of the City of Macon, the City of Payne City, and Bibb County.
Intergovernmental coordination.
House Bill 1090 by Representative Dawkins Hagler of the 91st, Beasley Teague of the 65th, Stevenson of the 90th, Kendrick of the 93rd, and Dickerson of the 113th. Bill be entitled an act to amend Part 14 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to other educational programs and the Quality Basic Education Act.
Education.
House Bill 1091 by Representative Weldon of the 3rd to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 5 of Title 26 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to drug abuse treatment and education programs.
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 1092 by Representative Rogers the 10th. Bill be entitled an act to repeal an act creating the Habersham County Airport Authority.
Intergovernmental coordination.
House Resolution 1486 by Representative Stovall of the 74th, Kaiser the 59th, Thomas the 56th, McLean of the 100th, and Bruce the 61st. The resolution recognizing Mr. Lovett Stovall.
Transportation.
House Resolution 1487 by Representative Bentley of the 139th, Chokus the 138th, Deffenbaugh the 1st, and McLean of the 100th. A resolution honoring the life of Mr. Walter M. Matthews.
Transportation.
House Resolution 1507 by Representative Stevens, the 164th, Williams of the 168th, Dollar of the 45th, Jones the 167th, Wilkinson the 52nd, and others. A resolution creating the Joint Study Committee on Standardized
Special
Instruction in
Rules.
Georgia Public Schools. Senate Bill 323 by Senator Dugan of the 30th, Jackson the 24th, Miller of the 49th, Martin of the 9th, Mullis the 53rd, and others. Bill being entitled an act to amend Chapter 18 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to state printing and documents.
Governmental Affairs.
Senate Bill 356 by Senator Williams the 27th, Stones the 23rd, Unterman of the 45th, and Cowes of the 46th. Bill being entitled an act to amend Title 4 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to animals.
Judiciary.
Senate Bill 358 by Senator Jones the 10th and Jeffries the 17th. Bill be entitled an act to amend an act to provide for a new charter for the City of Stockbridge.
Intergovernmental coordination.
Senate Bill 359 by Senator Jones the 10th and Jeffries the 17th. Bill to be titled an act to amend an act to provide for a new charter for the city of Stockbridge.
Intergovernmental coordination.
Senate Bill 360 by Senator Jones the 10th and Jeffries the 17th. Bill to be titled act to amend an act to provide for a new charter for the city of Stockbridge.
Intergovernmental coordination.
Senate Bill 361 by Senator Jones the 10th and Jeffries the 17th. A bill to be titled an act to amend an act to provide for a new charter for the city of Stockbridge.
Intergovernmental coordination.
Senate Bill 362 by Senator Jones the 10th and Jeffries the 17th. Bill to be titled an act to amend an act to provide a new charter for the city of Stockbridge.
Intergovernmental coordination.
Senate Bill 377 by Senator Jeffries the 17th and Van Ness the 43rd. A bill to be titled an act to provide for the creation of one or more community improvement districts in Newton County.
Intergovernmental coordination.
Senate Bill 390 by Senator Jones the 10th and Jeffries the 17th. A bill to be titled an act to amend an act to provide for a new charter for the city of Stockbridge.
Intergovernmental coordination.
Senate Resolution 954 by Senator Jeffries the 17th, Jones the 25th, Kennedy the 18th, Kirk the 13th, Bethel the 54th, and others. A resolution authorizing the granting of non-exclusive easements for the construction, operation, and maintenance.
State properties.
Senate Resolution 955 by Senator Jeffries the 17th, Van Ness the 43rd, Jones the 25th, Kennedy the 18th, and Hill the 6th. A resolution authorizing the conveyance and lease of various state-owned real properties.
State properties.
That completes the first readers.
Second reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 1066 by Representative Powell of the 32nd, a bill relating to additional duties of the Commissioner of Corrections. House Bill 1067 by Representative Rhodes of the 120th, a bill to amend an act to create a Board of Elections and Registration for Greene County. House Bill 1068 by Representative Kaiser of the 59th, a bill relating to health. House Bill 1069 by Representative Martin of the 49th, a bill relating to operation of an unregistered vehicle or vehicle without a current license plate, revalidations decal, or county decal. House Bill 1070 by Representative Dempsey of the 13th, a bill relating to adoption. House Bill 1071 by Representative Dickerson of the 113th, a bill relating to safe place for newborns. House Bill 1073 by Representative Strickland of the 111th, a bill relating to the juvenile code. House Bill 1074 by Representative Reeves of the 34th, a bill to amend an act to create a state court of Cobb County. House Bill 1075 by Representative Hawkins of the 27th, a bill relating to prohibited telemarketing, internet activities, or home repair. House Bill 1076 by Representative Bennett of the 80th, a bill relating to development authorities. House Bill 1077 by Representative Peake of the 141st, a bill to provide for a non-binding statewide referendum on the question of whether the state of Georgia should establish a strict regulatory structure that would allow for the limited licensure of growing, processing, and dispensing medical cannabis oil in Georgia. House Bill 1084 by Representative Houston of the 170th, a bill relating to additional duties and powers of the State Soil and Water Conservation Commission. House Bill 1085 by Representative Dempsey of the 13th, a bill relating to services for the aging. House Bill 1086 by Representative Martin of the 49th, a bill relating to general provisions regarding municipal corporations. House Bill 1087 by Representative Morris of the 156th, a bill relating to public assistance. House Resolution 1457 by Representative Rogers of the 29th, resolution honoring the life of Confederate General James Longstreet and dedicating a bridge in his honor. House Resolution 1458 by Representative Waits of the 60th, resolution encouraging all state, county, and local law enforcement agencies to engage in emergency pursuits only in the most necessary instances. House Resolution 1459 by Representative Peake of the 141st, a resolution honoring the life of Colonel William Lee Robinson, dedicating a bridge in his memory. House Resolution 1460 by Representative Alexander of the 66th, resolution recognizing Mount Olivet Missionary Baptist Church and dedicating a road in its honor. House Resolution 1461 by Representative Hatchett of the 150th, resolution recognizing Mr. Mac Fitzgerald, dedicating an intersection in his honor. House Resolution 1462 by Representative Coomer of the 14th, resolution recognizing Reverend Joe E. Edwards and dedicating an intersection in his honor. Senate Bill 271 by Senator Burke of the 11th, a bill relating to examination and treatment for mental illness. Senate Bill 275 by Senator Williams of the 27th, a bill relating to general provisions regarding counties, municipal corporations, and other governmental entities. Senate Bill 316 by Senator Gooch of the 51st, a bill relating to rules and regulations relative to bingo. Senate Bill 337 by Senator Walker III of the 20th, a bill relating to medical assistance. Senate Bill 348 by Senator Tippins of the 37th, a bill relating to education. Senate Bill 380 by Senator Gooch of the 51st, a bill to amend an act to reconstitute the Board of Commissioners for White County. Through second readers.
Reports of standing committees. The clerk will read.
Representative Cooper, the 43rd District Chairman of the Committee on Health and Human Services, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Health and Human Services has had under consideration the following bills of the House. It is instructed me to report same back to the House with the following recommendations. House Bill 926, due pass by committee substitute. House Bill 954, due pass by committee substitute. House Bill 1037, due pass. House Bill 1043, due pass by committee substitute. House Bill 1058, due pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Representative Sharon Cooper, Chairman. Representative Jan Tankersley, the 160th District Chairman of the Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Intergovernmental Coordination is under consideration the following bill of the House. It instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendation. House Bill 1053, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative Jan Tankersley, Chairman. Representative Coomer, the 14th District Chairman of the Committee on Transportation, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Transportation has had under consideration the following bill of the House and instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendation. House Bill 973, to pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Representative Coomer, Chairman. Representative Maxwell, the 17th District Chairman of the Committee on Regulated Industries, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Regulated Industries has had under consideration the following bills of the House. It has instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendation. House Bill 889, due pass by substitute. House Bill 654, due pass by substitute. House Bill 498, due pass by substitute. House Bill 727, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Representative Maxwell, Chairman. Representative Alan Powell, the 32nd District Chairman of the Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security, has submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security has had under consideration the following bills of the House. It has instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. House Bill 1060, due pass by committee substitute. House Bill 976, due pass by committee substitute. House Bill 1064, due pass by committee substitute. Respectfully submitted, Representative Alan Powell, Chairman. Representative Weldon, the 3rd District Chairman of the Committee on Juvenile Justice, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Juvenile Justice has had under consideration the following bills of the House. It has instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. House Bill 229, due pass by substitute. House Bill 725, due pass by substitute. House Bill 1073, due pass. House Bill 713, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Representative Weldon, Chairman. Representative England of the 116th District, Chairman of the Committee on Appropriations, submitted the following report. Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Appropriations has had under consideration the following bills of the House. It instructed me to report the same back to the House with the following recommendations. House Bill 1084, due pass. House Bill 1085, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Representative England, Chairman. That completes the reports of the standing committees.
We're about to go on to morning orders. All right, we're going on now to morning orders. House will come to order. House will come to order. Chair would ask that every member of the House please return to their seats and cease conversation. Chair recognizes for a morning order Representative Al Williams, joined by other members of the House, Representative Mac Jackson, Representative Glanton, Representative Gordon, Representative Stevens, Chairman Battles, Chairman Nix. Just a minute. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm joined by several members of both the Chatham delegation and some ministers. We have been in touch with Representative Bob Bryan's family. Spoke with his wife on last night, spoke with her again this morning. Representative Stevens spoke with his son just a little while ago, and the news this morning is positive. There are some positive signs being shown. The prayers of the righteous availeth much. We certainly keep Bob in our thoughts and in our prayers, and certainly his family, his wife, his children. A very difficult period right now as we kind of wait for some news. We're going to ask if you would join, and for those of you that know the power of prayer, and I'm going to ask that we be in agreement. If you don't mind, this is rare, but will you take the hand of whoever is nearest you? Let's touch and agree in this moment. Let's touch and agree, if we could. Let us pray. Almighty and everlasting, thou art eternal God. We thank you first for the victory. Our Father, we know that you are God and God all by yourself. We come to you humbly. We come now asking you to lift Representative Bob Bryan up. Our Father, we know that it's by your stripes that we're healed. We pray for his family. We pray for the strength of his children. We pray for all of those that love him, and that includes all of us here on the floor of this house. Father, we will continue to pray and lift him up. But Lord, we know that your will above all else will be done. Lord, we pray this prayer corporately and in agreement. And we all said, amen. Amen. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Williams.
Her group's not here yet.
Okay.
Neither is.
Chair recognizes the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, Chairman Willard, for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me say to everyone, we have today in our gallery a group of young lawyers who have agreed to take a great deal of their time for a year and go through the Leadership Academy of the State Bar, the Young Lawyers Division. And I'd like you to recognize them. Maybe one of those or more of those will be up there sitting on the floor of this house one day. Would you all mind standing and be recognized? Thank you for being with us today.
Chair recognizes Representative Williamson and Representative Kirby for a morning order.
Well, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today we have the Leadership Walton and the Youth Leadership Walton with us here. I know they've been splitting time in both bodies. I'm not sure they're here, but if you would help us recognize, there are a few of them up there. If y'all would stand and let us recognize you, and welcome to you, the People's House. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Sharper for a morning order. We'll come back to him. Chair recognizes Representative Buddy Harden for a morning order. And he's going to be joined by Chairman Epps, Representative Blackman, Representative Clark, Representative Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We want to recognize a very important group here today, a group of young people from one of the most progressive cities in the state of Georgia, and they are the future of that city, and we are surely happy to have with us today, accompanied by Donovan Head and Cheryl Spillers, the Youth Leadership Group from Perry, Georgia. Y'all stand, let us welcome you to the House of Representatives. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
All right, we have some invite resolutions and the honorees, none of whom are here. So we're going on to the rules calendar. We do have a couple more morning orders that we will come back to later in the day. We're going on now to the rules calendar. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 980. House Bill 980.
House Bill 980 by Representative Powell, the 32nd, and others to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to primaries and elections generally, so as to provide for the reopening of qualifications in municipal elections under certain conditions. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Government Affairs. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Spencer to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is a common sense elections bill, sort of a changing the situation that's sort of before us in the state of Georgia. Currently, right now, what is happening is there's about 20 or so municipalities that have their elections in even-numbered years, and I represent 2 of them. And so what's happening is they've always traditionally qualified in August. The last Monday in August is when they've qualified. So what House Bill 980 is doing is it's moving that August qualification up to the 3rd Monday in August. The reason we're doing this is because what's happening, these folks are required to qualify in the even number of years in March like we do. And what that has created is a long lame duck period for these people, and they feel like that's not a good environment conducive for good governance. So what we're doing is just bumping it up. It will apply to even and odd number year municipal elections. It's consistent across the board. The GMA has supported this bill. They are in full support of this language. Also, another piece that this bill does is when municipalities are opening up for qualifying and nobody qualifies for an open seat, then what has to happen is they go through the special election process, and that costs money for the local government. So what this is doing is it's opening it back up for 2 days once that qualifying has closed to allow somebody to come in and qualify for that seat, so it saves them some money. This is a common sense elections bill. GMA supports it. This will not affect consolidated governments. If you have any questions, Mr. Speaker, I'll yield for a couple.
You do not have any questions.
Thank you for your favorable consideration, Mr. Speaker. I yield the will.
Gentleman has yielded the will. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 980 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of House Bill 980, the ayes are 157, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. What purpose does Chairman Welch rise?
Rise to make a motion.
State your motion.
I move that we recommit House Resolution 502 to rules.
Clerk will read the caption.
House Resolution 502 by Representative Welch of the 110th and others, proposing an amendment of the Constitution so as to authorize the General Assembly to provide by general law for the dedication of revenues derived from fees or other assessments to the public purpose for which those fees or other assessments were imposed.
The chairman has moved that House Resolution 502, which was on the rules calendar for today, be recommitted to the Rules Committee. Is there objection? Chair hears none, and it is on its way back to the Rules Committee. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 916.
House Bill 916 by Representative Hightower of the 68th to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 26-4-118 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the Pharmacy Audit Bill of Rights so as to remove an exception relating to certain audits conducted by the Department of Community Health. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services, that committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Hightower to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring before you today HB 916. House Bill 916 is a product of a study committee that we held over the fall that looked into some bad practices of several state agencies. What we found is that there were several state agencies that were taking advantage of Georgia citizens. What they were doing, to give you an example, especially with those dealing with disabilities. We have day providers that provide services to individuals with disabilities. You had the provider here that was providing the service to the person with disabilities. These providers were filling out paperwork and regulation and sending that back up to state agencies. Those state agencies were holding these providers to a zero tolerance policy. What that meant was that if any of these providers messed up in any way or form of their procedures in filling out these policies, a signature line in the wrong place, they were requiring them to pay back to the state full recoupment of any dollars they received from the state. They were giving the providers no way out, even though there had been no indication of fraud by the providers, and the person that they were providing the service to received adequate service. What my bill aims to do is allow those providers an opportunity to correct any clerical errors. It says that we are going to provide these people with a 30-day window to make a change, to fix a clerical error, and then move on. This is good regulation, good policy. It's a way to rein back in some of those state agencies that are taking advantage of the powers they have through their rules and regulation policies that they have. Mr. Speaker, I'll stand for any questions.
You have a couple of questions if you care to yield.
I'll yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Beasley Teague to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. In the well, I appreciate this bill. Is it not true that I've spent my last 2 Christmases, holidays, taking time to call people about cutting off people's checks, trying to get it straight, because they just take all the money at one time without letting them know? Is it not true?
I'm sure the lady knows of what she speaks. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Do you further yield?
I'll yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Spencer to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
I yield.
Can you comment as to why they were using such heavy-handed tactics against providers when we're already struggling to give these people services? Can you make any comments to that?
Well, I can give you my opinion. I chaired the study committee, and my opinion is they have found themselves a revenue source. They had found a way to abuse these providers and get themselves a way to get money. It was all about the dollar. What I found in the study committee is I've actually located the woman who wrote the policy when she worked with the state agency that the state agencies were using to do this. And I brought her to our study committee. And I asked her, I said, so you wrote the policy that we have before us today? And she said, yes, I did. And I said, in your opinion, the policy that you wrote, is it being abused today by these state agencies? And her response was yes, 100%. This was never the intent of the policies we drafted. It was never the intent when they draft these policies to hold these these providers to a zero tolerance policy. There was a young lady in Chairman Knight's district who, because of a signature being in the wrong spot, not because of fraud, not because someone received bad care, but because of a signature was out of place, the state was trying to take from her almost $500,000. Her annual budget was $1 million. This is a woman who had had a providing service for almost 20 years with a great track record, but our state agency was about to put her out of business because of a missing signature. And the people who are going to suffer are those with disabilities that go to those providers and those daycare services day in and day out. This is a situation where people were being hurt by state agencies. This is what a lot of times we see on the federal side, and what those of us here on the state level, we need to stop when we see it, and that's what we're trying to do.
Do you continue to yield?
I'll yield one more.
The longer you're there, you know what happens.
That's right.
You get more questions.
Mr. Speaker, I'll yield to one last question.
Chair recognizes Chairman Knight to your right for a question.
Thank you. Does the gentleman yield?
I will yield.
Isn't it true that I'm 110% in support of this bill, and I want to thank you for your work that you've done here? Also, isn't it true that not only my Griffin Area Resource Center has become under an audit, but many of the other providers around this state are also coming up on audits and will be in the same situation that my Griffin Area Resource Center was?
That is very true, Mr. Chairman. And I'll add this, and then I'll yield the well. This goes to prove to you how brazen some of these state agencies are, guys. After our first study committee, one of the providers who came and chose to speak out about what the state was doing against them, one of the providers that came to our study committee, within 48 hours of them testifying to what was being done to them, they had a surprise audit. That tells me that, again, the state agency was trying to bully them into coming back and continuing to speak out. Within 48 hours of them coming to the front and testifying, they had a surprise audit. This is a good bill to rein those people back in. Mr. Speaker, I'll yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Chair recognizes Chairman Welch to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Hightower, for bringing the bill. Just real quick, you have pharmacies back home, local pharmacies. This bill also helps to protect them and the people that are, all of us, that are consumers of our pharmacies. In that bill, it also provides for the protection of them with a clerical error issue. So if there's a clerical error, all they have to do is fix the clerical error within that 30 days. And I had a pharmacist in my district tell me that they had recouped $25,000 from them for insulin given. So this is insulin given to a person, has to have insulin for the rest of his or her life. And then they recoup that back, not because there's anything wrong with the prescription, but because the doctor's address had changed. $25,000 taken away from a pharmacy, already given the medicine away. You can't get that back. That's gone. That's not right. And this bill needs to pass. Thank you very much.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 916 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 916. The ayes are 164, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 381. House Bill 381.
House Bill 381 by Representative Welch, the 110th, and others to be entitled an act to amend Title 45 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to public officers and employees, so as to repeal Chapter 17 relating to notaries public and enact the revised Georgia law on notarial acts of 2015. This bill having referred to the Committee on Judiciary. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Welch to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, I ask for your favorable consideration of HB 381. This is a comprehensive revision to the notary laws of our state. It rewrites the entire Chapter 17, incorporating the existing law that's under Title 17, but also incorporating new modern notary procedures in the bill. Our notaries are the guardians of the validity of the documents that they attest to. They are the guardians to ensure that individuals who sign documents are who they purport to be. Notaries serve us as an invaluable asset in terms of attesting to the veracity of those documents and the veracities of transactions that occur in our real estate markets and in our business markets. This measure goes to update that law. It also provides additional securities for including background checks for our notary publics, ensuring that they don't have a history of fraud or deceit in their background. But I will point out one thing to you, and I want to express this to members of the House have approached me about a concern, and I want to direct that to you right now, if I may. On page 15 of your bill, Section 45-17-19. This would be a new an add to our current law. Our current law does not allow for electronic notarization, but this bill would allow for electronic notarization, so a digital seal would be placed on a document for electronic transaction. This legislation would require that a person engaging in an electronic notary maintain a journal of all those electronic notary transactions. It's a way of a backup, if you will, of the transaction so that we can see in the future if there is some question of fraud, we can see that and track that back to the transaction date in the journal. That becomes effective on July 1st of 2017. January 1st of 2020, that same journal would be required for all notarial acts. Members of the House have expressed concern to me this morning about this particular provision and that its impact on businesses might be rather dramatic. Those that have to notarize many, many documents on a repetitive basis, keeping that track. And also members of the judiciary have expressed some concern about the disclosure of confidentiality issues with respect to the journal being a public document. I bring this to your attention because I do think this is a critical part of the bill in protecting against fraud, but at the same time, I do see that it weighs against business transactions in a way that might be detrimental to them. With that acknowledgement, I'm going to ask that you support the measure, and I will commit to this body that I'm going to work on those provisions concerning the journal, whether or not they're public or not, and then also whether or not we even mandate the journal in this particular code section as it moves over to the Senate. I know that's not the preferred way to do it, but enough members of this House have expressed concern to me this morning that I think it's something that I need to take up on the Senate side if you'll allow me to do so after passing it out. But I wanted to raise that to you, make sure you're aware of that provision. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Do you yield for questions?
Yes, sir, I do.
Chair recognizes Chairman McCall to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentleman, yield.
Yes, sir, I do.
Is it not true that I fully understand keeping the integrity of notaries at the utmost that we can in this state? But my question to you is, if we make them keep all these records and go through all this education, notaries are not the easiest thing in the world to run up on now where I come from. And do y'all have any idea how many are just going to let their commission expire to keep from having to do all this record keeping and education under this bill?
Well, I don't know. I couldn't tell you because I'd be speculating as to how many might surrender their notary or let it expire. But we have 150,000 notaries thereabout in the state of Georgia currently, which is a very large number. It's actually close to 1% of the population. So, we have a large percentage of those. So what this would do, though, is it would enhance some of the securities on notaries, making sure that they have the background's been checked. But I agree with you that the journal may pose an onerous burden on them, and that's why I wanted to commit to the House that I would work on that going over to the Senate.
Do you further yield?
I do, yes.
Chair recognizes Representative Trammell to your left for a question.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes.
Under the bill as is presently drafted, would failure to record a transaction after a notarial act constitute a misdemeanor?
Yes, as it's currently drafted, it would.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir. I'll take another question.
Chair recognizes Representative Buckner to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
My question is in another area of the bill regarding the training.
Yes.
And the question that I have from people back home is, will they have to go somewhere? Will there be a fee for the training? How often will they have to take the training? And they're concerned about the test.
Well, and rightfully so. We we already require some level of, this bill would require this level of training. It's a modest amount of training. I don't remember the exact number of hours. I don't think we actually, maybe you can point me to the line you're looking at.
514.
514. Yes, right here is just that's the examination of the course.
Right.
No, the Georgia Superior Court's Clerks Cooperative Authority will set that through their internal rules and policies. So we are requiring that the examination be done and that there be some minimal amount of study. We didn't specify the amount because I couldn't even tell you how much would be required, and I'd hate to legislate that. But the Cooperative Authority is in support of this bill. I've worked for them for now 4 years on this bill, so they are in support of it.
So I guess the last question that I have, if you'd yield further, is
yes,
every time they renew their commission, there would be additional training or not, or do you know?
There would be, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It's every 5 years.
Do you further yield?
Mr. Speaker, with that, I'm going to let us vote on the bill, and I ask for your favorable consideration with the assurances that I've given to you to work on that journal section going over to the Senate. Thank you very much.
Chair recognizes Representative Raffensperger to speak on the bill.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to let you know that I will not be supporting this bill, and I apologize to the good work that Representative Welch has done on this bill. I appreciate his comments that he'll be working on making changes. In our business, we're not a really large business, but every billing that we do every day requires a notary. Yesterday we had a slow day, so we did 20 billings, but when things pick up in the month, we can do 20 billings a day. And so just kind of running the numbers, 30 billings a day times 5 days a week is 150 billings we'd have each week, times 52 would be 7,800 billings a year. If it took 5 minutes per billing, that's 650 hours. At a billing rate of just $25 an hour, it would be a cost of our business of $16,000. So I can't support this bill right now. I do appreciate Representative Welch's comment that he'll work on helping small businesses. I recognize why the purpose of the bill is really for real estate transactions when you have those transactions that occur randomly. For businesses like ours, we're actually required to do billings notarized, and so that would place a burden on us. Also, I'm very concerned that if our notary retired, those records then become part of the public record, who I did business with, how much I did with business with them, because they go in the public record. So therefore, I cannot support the bill. Thank you very much.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? What purpose does Chairman Welch rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I make a motion.
State your motion.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to recommit this to rules and then to go back to the judiciary for a review.
Okay, the gentleman has moved that his bill be recommitted to the Rules Committee. Is there objection? Is there objection? The chair hears none, and House Bill 381 is going to be sent back to the Rules Committee. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 773.
House Bill 773 by Representative Houston of the 170th, to be titled an act to amend Chapter 26 and Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to the Georgia Housing and Finance Authority so as to increase the outstanding bond limit. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Appropriations, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Houston to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm presenting you House Bill 773, and this bill is also known as the Georgia Dream Bill because it finances houses through the Georgia Dream program. And before I begin this, I just want to make it clear that the Georgia Dream loans are insured and guaranteed by the federal government, and the state has no financial obligation to it. These bonds are sold on the New York bond market, and you might wonder why this bill went to appropriations instead of Ways and Means, and it did because we have no financial obligation on this. Since 1977, 44,000 families have been provided with housing through the Georgia Dream program. And the last time this bond limit was raised was in 1993. And in 1993, we all know that Georgia's population from 1993 to 2016 has almost doubled. So the Georgia Housing Finance Authority is asking to raise the bond from $1.3 million to $3 billion. Do I have any questions?
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I ask for your favorable vote, and I yield the well. Support. Favorable support.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 773 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 773. The ayes are 160, the nays are 5. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 948. House Bill 948.
House Bill 948 by Representative Powell of the 32nd to be titled an act to amend Code Section 42-9-90 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the application fee required for transfer consideration so as to revise the application fee paid to the Department of Community Supervision or the State Board of Pardon and Paroles. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Judiciary and Non-Civil. The committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes the chair of the Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee, Chairman Powell, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen. I bring to you today House Bill 948. In the terms of being a simple bill, that's exactly what this is. But I want to give you a little bit of a background to it. If you look at the bill itself, we're raising the non-indigent adult offender fee from $25 to $100. Now, what does that mean? For those of y'all who haven't been involved in the criminal justice system, in the state of Georgia, we're one of 50 states and 3 territories that we're a member of the Interstate Compact Commission. And what the Interstate Compact Commission is that is a nationwide compact of the correctional systems around this country. So that if you have an offender who has been sentenced in a respective state and wishes to transfer either their probation or their parole to another state, if permissible, then they can do that. That means that folks commonly, people go back to the state from where they were born and raised or their life or their family was. At some given point, there may come a need or a necessity because of a probation or a parole violation for that offender to be picked up and sent back to the original state in which the sentencing was done. And that's where this $25 fee, an application fee, for non-indigent applicants come from. If they're indigent, they don't have the money to pay anyway. But if they have any money, they've been paying $25. Severely underfunded. Sheriffs, once upon a time, sheriff's departments would go and take these offenders back to their original states or go to pick up offenders. That's long since gone out of the way because of the transportation cost. So what we have asked for is to raise that application fee from $25 to $100 to help offset the cost of transferring these inmates by the Department of Community Supervision. Mr. Speaker, members, I'll be more than glad to answer any questions if there is, and if there are none, I'd appreciate your consideration for this bill.
You have a question if you care to yield.
Be more than glad to.
Chair recognizes Representative Jackson to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I certainly do.
These are for transfers through the interstate compact, which we have agreement with in the state of Georgia and other states, but these don't pertain to an inmate when he want to transfer from one prison to get closer to home. It's only for interstate compact.
Only interstate compact between states.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have no further questions.
Mr. Speaker, I thank this body and I appreciate your favorable consideration.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 948 will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 948, the ayes are 165, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 614. House Bill 614.
House Bill 614 by Representative Stovall, the 74th, to be titled an act to amend Part 15 of Article 6, Chapter 2, of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to miscellaneous provisions under the Quality Basic Education Act. This bill had been referred to the Committee on Education. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Stovall to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. Good morning. I present to you House Bill 614, the Landon-Johnson Act, which will authorize the Department of Education to provide for the placement of video monitoring cameras and equipment by a school in self-contained classrooms which students receive special education services. Let me provide you some background about this legislation. This bill was named after Landon Johnson, a nonverbal student with unique challenges of autism and cerebral palsy. If you look at the screen, you will actually see a picture of Landon and his family. I met his mother, Mrs. Johnson, in 2012 at a parent summit, and she asked me to consider introducing a bill to allow video cameras in the classrooms like her son's. I told her that I hadn't been sworn in yet and I'm just a representative-elect and had to learn the process. For those who aren't familiar with the definition of self-contained, they are classrooms where students receive majority of their educational instructions in the same class, and most of the times there are a small number of students. Are video cameras new in public school classrooms? No. Currently in Georgia, there is no law allowing nor disallowing. The majority of our schools have some form of video monitoring camera for safety in the hallways and also in the cafeterias and perimeters of the buildings. Many of our early learning centers have cameras in their classrooms as well. Recently, we toured the Stepping Stone School in Griffin, which is specifically educates special needs students with severe disabilities. We spoke with the administrator and saw the cameras in each one of those classrooms. She informed us that cameras have been in their particular school for at least 20 years. They use it for instructional support, and the teachers are aware of the presence of cameras. Through the working of this legislation, we have worked on various versions and have met with other parents who alleged abuse of their children, like Mrs. Wells from Augusta and Mr. Hatcher from Fulton County. We also met with teachers who desired monitoring equipment in the classrooms as well. We have spent countless hours also meeting with children advocacy groups, teacher union, disability groups, the Department of Education, principals, school board members, superintendents, school resource officers, students, counselors, lawyers, and anybody else who would listen. We extended our outreach to hear from anyone who had an opinion by conducting town hall meetings. It was also featured on the television, in newspapers, and heard on the radio. The need for video cameras are not just Democratic, Republican, nor independent, but it crosses all political lines. What we heard affirmed that there have been cases of abuse from students to students, from teachers to students, and from students to students. On your desk, you should have received a notice from me asking for your favorable vote, outlining what 614 does or does not do. The cameras are not a big brother, but to serve as an objectable eye for our most vulnerable students. Look on the bill, if you look on line 34 through 39, they can only be used for purposes of classroom instruction, monitoring classroom interactions, and teacher observation. If a parent desires to view the tapes, then they must have a court subpoena. So there were some issues that were brought up about who can actually be able to view those tapes, and the school administrators present are the only ones who can be able to view it. But if the parents do have an issue, then they will have to go through the proper channels in order to be able to view those particular tapes. And there was also recently this morning actually an issue that was brought up with the duration of the time of the storage of the monitoring of the cameras. Presently in the bill, it has 3 months on there. And so I do agree if moving forward to be able to talk with over in the Senate to change it to add up to the 2 years maximum, so from 3 months to 2 years. Because you do have parents that might have situations, and even though they will be used for instructional support, then they won't be able to use those cameras footage over and over again to be able to identify those wonderful teachers that we have and being able to use it when they're dealing with certain students with certain disabilities. One other question you may have is who will actually pay for the cameras? The schools will be responsible for the cost. However, this bill does allow for federal and state funding, perhaps like if they apply for the innovation grant. But it does not prevent them from accepting gifts, grants, or donations. And we have also explored the idea of even asking perhaps later on the Georgia taxpayers to donate money when filling out their income taxes, along with encouraging our partners in ed at each one of the schools to help defray the costs. On average, there are about 18,000 classrooms noted as special education classes. Department of Education said it is difficult to exactly identify how many self-contained classes because of how the students are counted. Other states have considered similar legislation like Illinois, Ohio, and North Carolina. Texas was the first to enact a mandate to allow cameras in special education classrooms. Unlike in Texas, HB 614 is not a mandate. So I want to repeat that again. It is not a mandate. It is optional for school districts that want to participate. And this bill is not only for the present, but we're talking about for the future children that are not yet born. This bill does have the support of the Department of Education. In closing, I would definitely appreciate your favorable support for this legislation. And I also want to acknowledge my dad, my sisters, my son, and my daughter who's watching from college for this being my first bill. I know I set myself up, but I knew y'all probably already knew that. And I also like to thank those House members that worked diligently behind the scenes to help with supporting of this bill. And Mr. Speaker, with that, I will yield for questions.
You have many questions. Chair recognizes Representative Al Williams to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for this bill. I wanted to, is it not true that it is voluntary, the schools will not be required to have this, or did I misunderstand?
No, that is correct. It is voluntarily, and we actually have some schools that are interested in being able to participate in the program.
Is it not also true that my longtime friend and your daddy has a big stick back there while he watches this
That
process?
is correct.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
Yes, I do.
Chair recognizes Representative Dudgeon to your right for a question.
So, gentleman, to yield?
Yes, I do.
Is it not true that you and I spent about a year or year and a half working on this language, and that it's a great framework for something which will allow a good experiment to see whether this really works and helps out with education?
That's correct. We have worked diligently.
Will you further yield?
Yes.
Is it also true, though, that I found out from your dad that he's got videotapes of you in the classroom? We're about to set them out on the internet?
That may be true, not fully.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you further yield?
Yes, I do.
Chair recognizes Chairman Knight to your right for a question.
Thank you. Does the lady yield?
Yes, I do.
I am a little concerned, and this is very serious. Stepping Stones is in my district. In fact, my son is in Stepping Stones in one of their inclusion classes. Isn't that true? My question regards, the lady stated this was for educational purposes, but yet I see in here that this is also could be used at a parent's request.
Which line are you referring to? Because it's not at parent, only the parents can request to see the videotapes.
So on line 36, except for the written permission of parent or guardian, which would lead me to believe that a parent or a guardian could request to see these tapes.
Yes, and that's what I spoke about earlier, that they can put a request, but only be honored if there's a court subpoena. If you look on to line 37, where it says guardian of a child or pursuant to the subpoena of a court of competent jurisdiction.
General Lady, it says or pursuant to a subpoena. It didn't say and, if I'm reading that correctly.
Yes, but presently that is a requirement for any type of viewing because of the FERPA laws and because of the way with the videotapes that the parents have to, and even in the case of Stepping Stones, even though it's not a public school, but they still have to require the court order in order to be able to view those tapes because of FERPA.
To the General Lady, again, I think the question I'm having is I'm not reading that exactly the way that it's being stated, and I know that, isn't it true that Stepping Stones is a private school, and as a parent of a child that is in that school, I'm not sure I've got the right to go in there and use the videos or request the videos. That was for an internal purpose, as best I believe, from Stepping Stones' perspective, not from a parent being able to come in there and request or review.
Yes, like I said, that's with the FERPA laws, you do have to have that, and that's why if you go back up to line 30, It says the procedures and requirements to protect the confidentiality of the student records. And that's why no parent can just go in and put a request in to be able to view those cameras, the footage of it.
Generally, I don't read it that way, and I guess I would be concerned from a perspective of a parent being able to go in and request and see classroom tapes of everybody else's children in there. And again, I read this differently because I'm seeing that it's or, you know, it's an or there. It's not an and.
I appreciate that, Chairman Knight. I disagree because, like I said, the FERPA rules does supersede when it comes down to the privacy of it. And even though when you're reading, when you say it's or, pursue it, but they still have to have the written permission from the parents. And this is actually referring to the parents of the with the kids that are in that particular classroom, like you spoke about earlier. But like I said, they can't just come in and say, I want to see those particular tapes.
Well, to the lady, if this bill moves on, I would certainly like to be able to follow this through the Senate and make any changes should this bill, you know, receive a favorable vote. But I don't read that this way.
All right, thank you.
Does the lady further yield?
I yield the well.
You want to take a question
Yes,
from the leader of your caucus?
Okay. Yes, I didn't know it was her.
I mean, it's up to you.
Yes, I yield for one more question.
Chair recognizes the minority caucus leader, Leader Abrams, for a question to your left.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will generally yield?
Yes.
Is it not true that in response to the concerns raised, that the overarching predicate is that the Family Educational and Rights and Privacy Act controls, and that the language that's being referred to on line 37 is an exception that says that the only time anything can be done with this is if a parent makes a request, but that this information cannot be shared widely because the controlling language is the federal language, which precludes any person coming in, whether they're the parent or not, and asking for this material to be used for any other purpose?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, now I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 614 will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 614. The ayes are 158, the nays are 6. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 166. House Bill 166.
House Bill 166 by Representative Yates, the 73rd. To be titled an act to amend Chapter 6 of Title 40. To be entitled an act to amend Chapter 6 of Title 40 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating the uniform rules of the road so as to provide for the safe operation of a lightweight motorcycle or motor vehicle through an inoperative traffic control signal. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security. The committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes the chair of the Defense and Veterans Affairs Committee, Chairman Yates, to present the bill. This House will be in order.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. I know you're wondering why a 94-year-old guy's trying to help people on a motorcycle. Don't get me wrong, I'm in good shape and I don't ride motorcycles. But I'm a sucker for helping other people, and I have a number of people who ride motorcycles who came to me and said they had had trouble getting this bill on. And so I should mention that the purpose of the bill is to improve safety on motorcycles. It's just got a couple of points I want to make out here. They passed this bill years ago, and a couple of years ago, I guess, and the governor, there was something else in the bill in addition to what this bill has, and the governor didn't like that, and he vetoed it. So this is not in this bill now, so hopefully he will sign this if it's passed. The points in the bill extends the height of motorcycle handlebars to 25 inches. The motorcycles that are sold and ridden in Georgia, many of these are illegal because they are greater than the 15 inches, which is the current law. This will bring majority of those being sold and driven in compliance with the law. And there's another point or two in there, but that's pretty well the bill. And as I say, motorcycles are kind of dangerous to ride, of course, but we do dangerous things in our life. I remember I didn't think too much about it during World War II when I was flying a Piper Cub at the front lines, and the Germans were shooting at me because it was something it was necessary and had to be done. And so the motorcycle riders feel that there's nothing more exhilarating than riding a motorcycle, so we're just trying to make it more safe for them to do so. So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You do have one question. Do you yield?
Yes, I do.
Chair recognizes Coach Williams to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman yield?
Yes.
I was trying to talk to my seatmate to understand line 16 as to a sissy bar. Could you describe what one would look like?
Well, you know, I asked several people, and I thought when I used to hear about that in grammar school, I had a different idea maybe from what they're talking about here. Motorcycles never crossed my mind when they used to call a fellow student a sissy.
Thank you. Thank you.
You have no further questions.
I ask for your favorable consideration.
Gentleman has yielded the well.
Thank
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 166 will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 166. The ayes are 166. The nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes Chairman Matt Dollar to to introduce the doctor of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Ali Rahimi. Dr. Rahimi is a practicing cardiologist with Kaiser Permanente of Georgia. Since 2010, he's been caring for patients at his office in Sandy Springs, as well as Piedmont Hospital and Northside Hospital. He also serves as the Director of Performance Improvement Development Cardiovascular Quality. The best part of his job is being able to promote healthy lifestyles, mend the broken hearts of those in his care, and advance the best interests of his patients. Dr. Rahimi grew up in Tallahassee, Florida. After graduating from Florida State University, he moved to Georgia to receive his master's in health policy and management at Emory University and his medical degree from the Medical College of Georgia. He completed his residency in internal medicine at Yale University and his cardiovascular medicine fellowship at Harvard Medical School. He is board certified in internal medicine and cardiology, in addition to other subspecialty imaging boards. Dr. Rahimi and his wife, Lila, I hope I said that right, live in beautiful East Cobb County with their 3 children. Though originally from Seminole, he now cheers for the Georgia Bulldogs, as his oldest child, Yasmin, began college in Athens this year. When I went down to meet Dr. Rahimi earlier today, he was a little bit indisposed as he was caring for a student who had hit the deck, fainted flat in front of the nurse's station. So he's been busy at work today. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Rahimi.
Thank you. It is indeed a great honor to serve as the Doctor of the Day for this esteemed body. On behalf of Kaiser Permanente and the Southeast Permanente Medical Group, we take care of over 300,000 patients in this great state, and we look forward to working with this body on many issues to advance, to provide the best of medicine for our patients and to continue to promote great health care for our state. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, my pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 838. House Bill 838.
House Bill 838 by Representative Blackman of the 146 and others to be titled an act to amend Chapter 24, Title 33, the Fiscal Code of Georgia annotated relating to insurance general provisions, so as to provide that the carriers that sell certain health insurance plans in the state through an agent shall compensate such agent a minimum of 5% of the collected premiums. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Insurance. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Blackman to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, fellow members of the House. House Bill 838, as noted, provides for the compensation of health insurance agents for services provided to small employers and individuals on respective health insurance plans. What we're really doing here is creating a floor. We're noticing that some of the carriers are in fact eliminating the premium part that they're sending to their local agents. And so we're creating a floor there of 5% for the small employers and 4% for individuals, and the only exception there being during the special enrollment period. I'd also like to mention that we work with all parties involved, and including Commissioner Hudgens, and they are all supportive of this legislation. And just kind of in short, that, you know, we operate in a very heavily regulated environment already, so this is meant to be a simple solution available to allow small businesses and individuals a choice and an advocate when it comes to health insurance coverage, while also protecting our local independent agents by providing for fair compensation for services provided. Mr. Speaker, I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
You do have a question or two if you care to yield.
Yes, sir, I will yield.
Chair recognizes the Minority Caucus Whip, Representative Hughley, to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Isn't it true that agents have come to us and explained to us how they were not being fairly compensated for the individual as well as small group health policies, and this seeks to address this issue?
Yes, ma'am, you are correct. Thank you for the question.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Bentley to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative, I thank you for this bill, but I'm just curious to know, was there any consideration for life insurance?
No, ma'am. This is strictly a health insurance bill.
Okay. Thank you again for your work on this bill.
Thank you, ma'am.
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the will.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. What purpose does the minority caucus whip rise?
Speaker, pursuant to Rule 133, I'd like to be excused from this vote.
Lady has that right, and the journal will so reflect. Ring the bell again, Mr. Clerk. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 838, the ayes are 145, the nays are 17. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. For your planning purposes, it is the chair's intention now to complete the rules calendar, and I'll remind you that the groups that we were going to honor in here earlier, none of which were here at the time we normally do that, so we still have invite resolutions, but it's my plan to complete our business before we break, because I know we got a lot of committee meetings this afternoon. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 874.
House Bill 874 by Representative Reeves, the 34th, and others to be titled an act to amend Article 9 of Chapter 11, Title 15, Title 16, Chapter 4, Title 24, and Code Section 42-5-18, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to access to hearing and records, crimes and offenses, relevant evidence and its limits, and items prohibited for possession by inmates, so as to improve ability to prosecute street gang terrorism. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Judiciary Non-Civil, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Reeves to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, barely, members of the House. I'm here today to address the crisis of criminal street gangs. I'm here today because we have a problem in need of a solution, and I'm here today with a solution. Last summer, I became aware of a hard reality of some seriously increasing crime statistics in my home county, Cobb County. Gang activity was growing at an alarming rate. Crime rates were up almost 200% in some areas. Police pointed to the fact that this was increasing gang activity. By the end of the year, I'm holding the headline, the newspaper from December 20th, 2015 of the Marietta Daily Journal. The headline reads, "Gang cases doubled in 2015. Here's an article dated September 24th, 2015 from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Gangs Establishing Major Footholds in Suburbs. So why am I here on this? I'm here because my community, just like many of your communities, is losing the battle against gangs. So last summer, I sought to do something about this. I began working with my DA and his prosecutors. It eventually grew to other gang prosecutors in Metro Atlanta and Georgia, the prosecuting attorneys' councils, the FBI, and the Department of Corrections to craft this piece of legislation. Our goal was to look at where we are right now and where our law is not in line with what we are facing with the gang crisis, and the goal was to close that gap. So I'm bringing you a solution to what is a dire problem. In 1992, this body passed the Georgia Street Gang Terrorism and Prevention Act. It was updated substantially in 2006. It's been about 10 years since it's been worked on. In 2006, the legislative intent of this bill stated, Georgia is in a state of crisis caused by violent criminal street gangs whose members threaten to commit a multitude of crimes against peaceful citizens. These activities, both individually and collectively, present a clear and present danger to public order and safety. That was 2010. Here we are 10 years later, and the problem is worse. Gangs are growing faster than ever. There are numerous statistics that demonstrate the numbers on a national level that show that the Southeast is the second highest region for gang growth in the country. Gangs are sophisticated. Many of you may be surprised to learn gangs operate like corporations with elected leadership boards, governing principles. This is not small crime. So what do? It means that we have to revisit this issue. It means that we have to commit ourselves to keeping up with the changes in gang behavior, with advancements in technology and how gangs use technology, and with the trends that law enforcement and prosecutors are seeing. So my bill is before you to offer a few practical solutions to this ever-growing and ever-changing environment of the criminal enterprise of street gangs. In summary, my bill does four basic things. Number one, it offers clarifying provisions that relate to evidentiary laws related to what is admissible to prove a street gang. Number two, it strengthens our laws in the very serious issue of witness intimidation for when a gang member threatens or intimidates someone from participating in the judicial process, or someone that threatens witnesses, judges, jurors, etc. Number three, it enhances the maximum sentencing range for certain conduct that is a violation of the Gang Act. This is the essence, the truly bad, horrible conduct where gang members will harm individuals because they refuse to join a gang, harm them because they try to leave the gang. It also enhances the punishment for gang leadership and management. It should be noted, these changes are not mandatory minimums. Number four, my attempt, and the last of what I'm going to talk about here, is my attempt to do something about the crisis that our prison system is facing with contraband and how gang members are using contraband such as telecommunication devices, which are cell phones, to conduct their criminal enterprise from the last place on earth that they should be able to do that, and that's our prisons. And I'm going to spend the rest of my time on this issue. I want to try to communicate to you how unique this problem is. The reality is that we don't have adequate resources to fight the gang problems on the streets in our communities. But what has happened, and this is important, is the fight is now a dual fight. The fight has also moved to inside our prisons. Right now, the safest place for a gang to conduct its activity is inside our Georgia prisons. Think about that. The state of Georgia has a full-fledged crisis on its hands with this issue. The Department of Corrections be the first to let you know this. The Department of Corrections will tell you, gangs get these phones in. They run all sorts of gang activity, ranging from witness intimidation to ordering hits and murders of individuals, witnesses, rival gang members, and law enforcement. They also use these phones to run frauds, targeting vulnerable citizens with fraudulent schemes to steal their money. They also use social media for gang purposes from prison. The Department of Corrections will tell you that inside the walls of a prison block, the gangs control the social structure of life in prison. And they'll also tell you the gangs control the phones. This statistic, in the last 2 years, members of the House, 23,162 illegal cell phones were found in Georgia prisons in 2014 and 15. This issue is so substantial that recently the feds have even gotten involved. Most of you have heard just a few weeks ago, the U.S. Attorney's Office indicted 46 former Department of Corrections officers, Georgia Department of Correction officers, for offenses such as taking bribes from inmates and smuggling in contraband such as cell phones. U.S. Attorney John Horn referred to this as, quote, staggering corruption. Other federal cases in Georgia involve guards smuggling in drugs into prison, or, quote, or getting contraband cell phones to inmates who then use the phones to run crime rings inside prison walls. U.S. Attorney John Horn has stated, quote, the indictments allege inmates managed and directed a number of elaborate fraud schemes that victimized citizens from across this country from within the Georgia prison system using contraband cell phones. The unfortunate common denominator to this criminal conduct is the pervasive availability of contraband cell phones, which allows too many prison inmates to continue victimizing our communities while serving their sentences. In an indictment from this past fall, an inmate in Georgia used a contraband cell phone to order an unsuccessful hit on a government witness. Members, just last week, I'm holding a story from Gwinnett County from the newspaper. A man who's a gang member was indicted by a Gwinnett grand jury for ordering a murder using an illegal cell phone from prison. Someone is dead over this. These phones are also used to establish the social media presence. Why is that significant? Because they are making their presence known. Even though they've been sentenced and are locked up, they are still out there, they're still involved, and they're still running their gangs. How do these phones come in? According to the Georgia Department of Corrections, these phones come in a few different ways. Sometimes they're thrown over the fence. They're kicked, a soccer ball full of phones is kicked over the fence. I've even heard a story of a dead cat that had a bag stuffed in its carcass and thrown over a fence. It was full of phones. But by and large, they are coming in through the door from employees, some of whom are sworn officers who have taken an oath to protect us. These folks are the buffer between violent gang members and you and I and our families, and they are working for the gangs. Employees are smuggling phones in. They have creative ways to bypass security. In some cases, the security detail is in on the deal themselves. I have pictures here of cell phones coming in through a church hymnal with the phone cut out of the pages so it fits in, under the rubber of tennis shoe soles, and they're even being smuggled in through body cavities. Why did they do this? Department of Corrections reports that a contraband cell phone, hear me out here, a contraband cell phone will go anywhere from $500 to $1,000 per phone. Smartphones, such as an iPhone, can generate $1,500. Think about that. Where does that money come from? It comes from the gangs. This type of corruption is truly the most despicable corruption. Right now, the Department of Corrections is practically helpless on this issue. And that helplessness is resulting in rampant gang activity coming from the one place in the state that we should be able to control and limit it, and that's our prisons. So my proposal with this massive problem is to do something real, to put some real teeth in our laws as we, this body, get to set this policy. When the gang members and the corrupted officers weigh the risks, we need to make it so that it's not worth it. We need to set the starting point on this behavior. We are seeing law enforcement and prosecutors across the state begin to work on gang issues such as this. This awareness is now here, but I believe that we can change this criminal activity by creating a true deterrent that is very specifically tailored to this problem. My bill would require that if an inmate in Georgia is convicted of using contraband, such as a cell phone, to further criminal street gang activity, and that's very important, it has to be used to further criminal street gang activity, which is a very clearly defined burden, complicated burden for the state to meet, then that sentence would carry a 5-year consecutive mandatory minimum. This would not apply to a person using a phone to call their brother to tell him happy birthday. This applies for phones that are being used for gang purposes only. And the reason for this, a person who is already locked up in custody does not operate the same way, does not operate with the same level of concern or care or obedience for our laws as someone who is not locked up. A person that's in prison essentially has nothing to lose. They are not deterred. They are already in prison. They do not believe that anything can happen to them. What are they going to do to me? I'm already here. There are no consequences for action. Members of the House, the only thing that they want, and what they all have in common, is they want to go home. So if we want to make a difference here, then we have to hit them right square in the middle of the only thing that matters to them, and that's when they get out, and it has to be required. It is my belief that this is the way we can deter this rampant behavior. And on the other side of this coin, we have the enablers, the employees who are providing contraband. With the kind of money that's being offered to them, if we are able to do anything to deter and stop them, then we are going to have to make it a hard decision for that person. They have to, again, weigh the risks. Right now, it's obviously worth the risk. We need to make it not worth it. I believe that if these employees are faced with the reality of required prison time if convicted, it changes the decision analysis for them. So my proposal includes a minimum of 2 years to serve mandatory with a maximum of 5. We have a chance to show gang members and corrupt Department of Correction employees that we will act appropriately and proportionately to the level of this pervasive conduct, scheme, racket, and enterprise. Members, the key here is doing something meaningful. Without this teeth in these laws, I do not believe that we even come close to addressing the issues. We have to show these individuals we care about what they are doing and that will put a stop to this. As I said earlier, as a target for gang activity evolves and moves, our laws have to move to be more effective. Y'all, I've been practicing law for over 10 years now. As most of you know, the first 5 years of my career, I was a prosecutor. One of the first things that I learned, and please hear me out right now on this, one of the first things I learned was that as a prosecutor, I had 3 options with every case that I had. Sometimes people need to be punished. Sometimes people need to be forgiven. And sometimes people need help. Some of my proudest moments as a prosecutor was handling a case that offered forgiveness and help to the person charged. In the last few years, Georgia has led this nation in developing policy and criminal justice reform to encourage systematic change in offering forgiveness and help. And I am so proud of that. I applaud our efforts there. But there is that other category. Sometimes people need to be punished. And that is a real category. We live in violent times. We are surrounded by people every day who will take a life and feel no remorse for it. There is evil, and we have to fight that evil. We have to fight the existence of these gangs. So this is the other side of criminal justice reform. And while the easy thing is to say that an effort to implement a mandatory minimum is in opposition of criminal justice reform, I submit to you this is the other side of criminal justice reform. This is where we have to continue to be stronger. The eradication of gangs has to remain our commitment. Gangs create victims. We all know that. Victims in every community, every race, and every gender. But gangs also steal our teenagers. And in most cases, we do not get them back. Teenage boys, 13, 14, 15 years old, and in some cases girls, are wooed into joining these gangs. They don't realize it, but eventually into a life sentence. And it doesn't have to be that way, but we are going to have to do more to eradicate them. Every gang that we can eradicate from your community also means that we've saved lives of several teenagers who may instead become productive and successful human beings. And so I submit to you that it's worth the fight. I hope you will join me today and vote for this bill, which I believe is a solution to a real problem. which I believe will move the ball forward in the eradication of criminal street gangs. I yield the well for questions.
You got a number of questions. Do you yield?
I do.
Chair recognizes Chairman Stevens to your left for a question.
To your left. Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
Does the gentleman believe that I fully support the bill?
I do.
Does the gentleman understand that I'll vote for the bill if he will leave the well?
Your point is clear.
If I had known you were going to be in the well that long, we could have done this much earlier today. You might have had greater attention span. Do you further yield for questions?
I'll yield for one more question.
Chair recognizes Representative Evans to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
Isn't it true that I share your concern about the need to reduce gang violence and to keep our families and especially our children safe?
Absolutely.
Does the gentleman further yield?
I do.
But isn't it also true that I have a concern with the placement of mandatory minimum sentences in this bill when we as a body have very deliberately moved away from imposing minimum sentences so that we can give our judges the flexibility to fashion appropriate sentences to address the situation that is before them, and for that reason I'll be voting no, but isn't it true that that does not mean at all that I don't appreciate the problem, and it certainly does not mean that I support gangs?
I understand your position.
Thank you.
You still have questions. Do you further yield?
I will yield the well, please. Thank you.
Gentleman has yielded the well. There are other members that wish to be heard on the bill. Chair recognizes Chairman Setzler to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I rise today in support of HB 874, and I want to speak really to one component of this bill, and it was raised by the bill's author, and it was raised by some of the questions. I know we've got a busy day today. There's folks coming in and off the floor, so I don't want to take more time than I need to, but I want to speak to the issue of the mandatory minimums. I think we very courageously as a state, with a Republican governor, have led the nation in many ways in criminal justice reform. As I've traveled the country, folks have come and said, how does Georgia do some of the things that he does with a Republican governor and House and Senate? And I think we've been very courageous in saying the Republican Party and the Democratic Party both stand for reasonable, fair criminal justice reform and doing the right thing by Georgians. You're going to hear some critique today, though, on HB 874 around this issue of mandatory minimums. And I want to speak to that issue specifically and why these specific mandatory minimums are appropriate. I was supportive of the elimination of many mandatory minimums in our code, and I think I stand behind that and would continue to support careful consideration of this issue in general. But when we think about what we've seen in the last year in the compromising of our corrections officials, in violating their oath, allowing contraband in massive numbers into our prisons, that represents a different kind of thing. Who has a greater trust in our state than police or correction officials in doing their jobs with integrity and not being subject to corruption? The fact that 23,000 contraband items were found in our prisons in the last 2 years is staggering to me. The fact that federal prosecutors come into Georgia and say they see staggering corruption in our system reminds us that we as a body have to act and have to ensure that people who are violating their oath and allowing contraband, phones, and other things into prisons and being agents of crime in our prisons themselves can't just get a slap on the wrist. If we're ever going to consider a mandatory minimum sentence, but police officers and correction officials shouldn't be subject to those things. I can't think of anybody who should be more subject to a mandatory minimum sentence to actually serve time in prison and not just get probation than a corrections official who's on the take and sneaking contraband into our prisons. What HB 874 does, it requires for correction officials who do these things, who act in concert with criminal street gangs or other criminals to sneak contraband into our prisons, it gives them a mandatory minimum sentence to actually serve hard time of 2 years. I would certainly hope we would do more than that. I would certainly hope that our judges, in extreme cases, would sentence them to more time. But a minimum time to serve of 2 years for a corrupt election official doesn't sound out of balance. It seems in keeping with common sense criminal justice reform, where we still draw the line on important distinctions and certain things that take crime to another level. I think this bill strikes that balance. Lastly, I will tell you, when we talk about the mandatory minimum sentences of people who are involved in the activity of a criminal street gang and running those operations from prison, there is a very, very high bar that has to be satisfied to demonstrate that. This bill does not contemplate passing out mandatory minimum sentences of 5 years like candy. What's required under HB 874 to give a mandatory minimum sentence to a gang operative operating within prison requires, in addition to proving their guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, it requires 4 additional elements to be proven. Now, I don't want to get too much into the details of the things we talk about in the Non-Civil Judiciary Committee. I think this body expects the committee to get that right. But to prove a criminal gang action, there's 4 additional elements, all of which have to be satisfied to prove gang activity. Not just that the crime was committed, but that there was a gang, that the person was a member of the gang, and that there's a nexus that ties all that together in a criminal gang activity for this mandatory minimum sentence that's being contemplated to apply. All 4 of those elements have to be able to be proved beyond any reasonable doubt for this to even be applicable. And the only people this is applicable to are people who are already convicted felons, who've been convicted of felonies that are in our prisons for these kinds of crimes already. This bill does nothing to teenagers in our high schools who are on our streets who get caught up in something and have never had an encounter with the law. This deals with hardened criminals in our prisons that we prove all 4 of these elements on in using contraband and using technology to further their criminal activities and to order hits and to have people killed outside of prison. We as the General Assembly have an obligation to look at the laws we pass every year and to make sure the way we address them are relevant to the conditions of the day. I would ask you to consider that crime is evolving very quickly and criminals are using technology in ways we would have never dreamed of in years past. And HB 874 is balanced. There's things that were filed in this bill initially that have been taken out by our committee because the committee believed those things would have created an imbalance. What we have is a committee substitute that I think strikes the balance we need as a state, and I would urge your support for HB 874.
Gentleman has yielded the well. We have other members who have signed up to speak on the bill. Before they do, though, the chair wants to remind every member of Rule 81 of this House that if you wish to speak on a bill, the time to come sign up under our rules is during the time the bill is before it's called or during the first presenter. After that, technically, the chair can deny you the opportunity to speak. I'm not going to do that today, even though I'm hungry. But I am going to ask those who signed up after the bill was first presented to limit their comments and be very, very brief. Others did sign up. Chair recognizes to speak on the bill Chairman Dollar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I will keep my remarks brief. Members, I believe in my 14 years here, this is, I believe, only the second time I've ever stood in this well on a bill that was not mine to speak in support of it. But I felt this issue warranted it. Several years ago, not that many, leadership from the governor and leadership from this body, Georgia became a trailblazer in criminal justice reform to keep nonviolent offenders out of prison and to come up with creative alternatives to address those issues. I agree 100% with what Representative Reeves said when he said this is the other side of that, ladies and gentlemen. These aren't petty criminals we're talking about. These are the worst of the worst. And there is nothing that we can say other than more jail, that they're just not going to keep laughing and kind of mocking the system. So call your sheriffs and call your DAs and see how they think you should vote on this bill. Because we either do something in this body to address this rising tide, and ladies and gentlemen, it is rising, or we don't. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes to speak on the bill Representative Al Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While I was listening to the very eloquent presentation by the author, he had me for 5 minutes. For about in the 12th minute, I wasn't quite sure where I was on this bill. But I do know this much. We talked about mandatory minimums, and we've been assured that this is not one of those bills. And it may not be chicken, but it sure has some hen-house ways. Be very careful here. While we all hate what gangs in many instances does to young people in particular, gangs are not new to this country. And when we start locking people up, what about the little person that was intimidated into being there and happened to get caught up in the sentencing? This is that person who 10 or 12 years from now will have to revisit prison reform, which we've already dealt with. It's nothing new to get threats from jail. My goodness, Capone did it. The Gambino family did it in the 40s and the 30s. Everybody put the word out what they were going to do to you. That's part of it. That's a criminal enterprise. I don't know about the rest of you, but I have confidence in the Commissioner Homer Bryson. He is getting on top of this, and he's doing a great job of handling it. With all the technology we have, just a matter of time when they'll be able to jam all those messages that come from sources that are not legal. Let's give him an opportunity to work on something that is not as horrific as we've made it. Let me tell you, here's what bothered me when I looked at the sentencing. The problem is those are the guards that are selling them from the inside. Flop it. They should be getting the 20 years, and the 2 years should be on the other end because they are the ones that's creating the problem. They're bringing them in. We moved to do something about that and under appropriations this year, and thank you, Chairman Welch, when we started talking about raising the terrible pay of prison guards. We get a better quality of prison guard, and we make them more attentive. We've been this route. We saw it in the 90s when the deal was lock them up and throw the key away. Then we had to come back 20 years later and find the key. Let's don't do that again. I believe that the commissioner can handle this, and I don't want to see unintended consequences because every gang member is not an axe killer. The real problem's inside the prison, and the judges are going to handle gangsters that are caught and brought before them anyhow.
And the author who so eloquently spoke, as a prosecutor, I'm sure he didn't need this legislation to put a lot of people in jail. Mr. Speaker, with that, I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Representative Wilkerson to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I start, I want to thank Representative Reeves for actually tackling this very important issue. The individuals we're talking about in this are very dangerous people. House Bill 874 has the potential to provide our prosecutors with some needed tools to tackle the growing threat of gangs in our communities. It has the potential to continue our smart approach that we've seen over the last years with our criminal justice reform system. Unfortunately, what we see with 874 is not doing that. It takes us back to the days before I got here where we just decided to lock people up and instead of our smarter prosecution of criminals. Mandatory minimums. I mean, that's what this is about. That's what this whole discussion is about. It's not about the first three sections. It's about mandatory minimums. Like many of you, I do not like them. I do not like mandatory minimums. And while we've had numerous discussions over the last month, you can go back to, I read the same paper Representative Reeves does, and the Marietta Daily Journal. We talk about this bill. And the very first thing I said is, let's make it bipartisan reform that we can enable our prosecutors to do their job. You come back to January, we have another bill that says Reeves to file bill to curb gang activity. We agree with that. We agree that this is a bipartisan push to eradicate criminal activities in our prisons. Unfortunately, most of the conversation has happened over the last few days where we talked about, what do mandatory minimums do? What they do is they take away the discretion of judges to sentence individuals. So what you're left with is, suppose you do have someone that has a cell phone and you got a bigger fish you want to go after. What does that prosecutor do? What does that prosecutor do? Do they go after the small fish because they have to do the mandatory 5? I've talked to the DAs. It was suggested. I talked to them on Sunday. I talked to them on Monday. I talked to prosecutors across the state. And they said, you know what, we're okay with the mandatory minimums. Our DA in Cobb County, you've seen a lot of Cobb County folks up here, said that he's okay with the mandatory minimums. But he also said, I don't like them, and I'm okay if they come out as long as you give me the ability, my judges, the ability to add on sentencing time. That's all we're asking, is to send this back. Let us give them the tools to punish folks. Give us the tools to, you just arrested 46 guards, I think it was, that were doing something they should not be doing. But we have to allow our judges to do their job. We have 3 branches of government for a reason. It's not our job to tell them. I said if we had a situation where judges weren't doing their job, we can talk about that in 2 years. But we haven't even given the judges the opportunity to do their job. Let's continue the smart criminal justice reform that we've been doing the last couple of years. And I think we could all be on the same page and walk out of here with a bill that we can all be proud of, that we can go back to our communities and talk about fighting crime together. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll yield the well.
Chair recognizes Representative Abel Mabel Thomas to speak on the bill.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker and members of this body. I must admit that some of the points that I was going to say have been stated by the 2 previous speakers. However, I still want to go on record in not in support of House Bill 874, but in support, as was stated before, a bill that will have that type of bipartisan support, as well as a bill that will continue to give judges the discretion. I've had the opportunity to serve in the 90s and in the end of the 80s, when there was a great push for mandatory minimums. And we saw what it did. It obviously filled up the jails in the state of Georgia to the point that we are in 2016 with criminal justice reform. And I will have to commend the governor and those people who have in this body as well, who's been working to really look at how the budget was being busted by us housing prisoners who were nonviolent offenders. My issue sometimes when it comes to bill is not that we always just make sure that one person that was in extreme got punished, but in abundance of caution to make sure that those who got caught up in the circumstances, that they don't end up in a situation where they end up in a situation where they get the high end of mandatory minimums. And in this bill, we're talking about sometimes up to 20 years. Also, I know, and I talked earlier to this body about the book called The New Jim Crow by attorney Michelle Alexander that talks about what happens when you get a felony in America. And even though we are taking steps in Georgia, the issue of a person getting a felony on their record is so serious, because what we don't want to do is to create a circumstances where a young person early on, and even though a young person can be 21, you can say, well, they're grown. They may be grown, but 21 all the time doesn't mean that you up to date in what's going on in the world. And so in abundance of caution, it would be the best case scenario if this bill was recommitted back. But if not, then maybe in the Senate, if there's some hearing and some compassion, then maybe we can do something that would make this bill not have such a detrimental impact on our young people, because I don't want to see them in a situation where they get a felony early on and the rest of their life they can't get services, they can't get housing, they can't get a job. And so I'm basically asking that we deal with the hardened criminal as we've been talking about, but in abundance of caution, let us not move too fast to go back to mandatory minimums where some of our best and bright minds may be caught up and end up in circumstances that will impact their lives forever. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the opportunity, and I yield the well.
Lady has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. The chair recognizes the chairman of the committee from whence the bill came for the chairman's time, Chairman Golick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I'll be brief. It was in January 2011 when Governor Deal stood where the Speaker's standing right now and talked to us first about criminal justice reform. It was in his inaugural address, I think, and it was very early in his address. It may have been in the third or fourth paragraph. And the point that he made to us, which really set the course that we have taken in the state of Georgia on criminal justice reform, is that we needed to stand up and recognize the fact that there were some people in our society that we are really scared of, and there are people in our society that we were just mad at, and that we really needed to be able to distinguish between the two when it came to our sentencing. And as a result, over the next few years, we moved in the direction of taking a good hard look at nonviolent offenders, mostly drug offenders, and recognizing very publicly that in some cases, the only threat that they pose to society was themselves, and that they were taking up prison beds for those individuals who truly did represent a threat to our society. And we spent a few years focusing on that, and I am told that the state of Georgia is actually a model now for the nation, due in extremely large part to Governor Deal's leadership on that issue and the support of the men and women in this chamber. But in that process, let's not lose sight of the fact that there are people in our society, to use Governor Deal's words, that we are scared of. And we should be scared of. And I don't mind telling you that I am scared of. The criminal street gang problem in this state, from conversations and exposure to information that I've had with law enforcement professionals, represents the single largest threat to the public safety in this state right now. That is not overstatement. Someone in previous comments talked about organized crime, what it used to look like. It's very different now. In some cases it's similar, but in some cases it's much more sophisticated, it is much more brutal, it is not concentrated in urban areas necessarily. It has permeated urban, suburban, exurban, and rural jurisdictions like a cancer. The recruiting that goes on in some areas of the state at the grade school level, elementary school, and they slowly bring them in as part of a greater criminal enterprise. This is the next frontier. It's not the next frontier, it's the current frontier of what law enforcement is facing as the single largest threat to our state. We have three core functions, in my opinion: public health, public safety, public education, in whatever order you care to put those in. The head coach has assigned me to public safety, the larger area of public safety, along with others. And so that's what we focus on. I hear people loud and clear when they talk about mandatory minimums, because it does fly in the face to a degree of everything that we have focused on in the last several years. But those people are different. We are talking in very large part about drug addicts. That's who we're talking about, drug addicts. These are the people that we're talking about today who are feeding that problem. And there's always a drug aspect to it, and there's a violence aspect, there's human trafficking, prostitution. The parade of horribles goes on nearly forever. And we've come to the point with these organized crime operations, and that's what they are, very sophisticated cartels, that if we don't take the steps just to keep up, we'd want to go ahead and get ahead of the game, right? If we can. But at the very least, we need to keep up. Representative Reeves' bill puts tools in the toolbox of our law enforcement to give them the opportunity to keep up with the single greatest threat to public safety in this state. This is a bipartisan bill. This bill passed unanimously in a bipartisan manner out of Judiciary Non-Civil. Why? Because it was recognized by the committee of professionals that we have on that committee. This is not a black problem. This is not a white problem. This is not a Democratic problem. This is not a Republican problem. This is a Georgia problem. And as a Georgia problem, we should stand together and say, we have our differences, but protecting the public safety is something that we come together on very much on purpose. I commend the bill to you. I ask for your favorable consideration, and thank you for your time and attention.
Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 874 will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 874. The ayes are 106, the nays are 60. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes for a morning order, I guess it's now afternoon order, Chairman Jason Shaw, Chairman Amy Carter, Representative Corbett, and Representative Sharper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is Valdosta State University VSU Day at the Capitol, and also the Lowndes County Bird Supper later today at the Depot. But in the gallery, we've got our friend and former Senator Dr. Cecil Staten and his wife with us today, and they have been waiting patiently up there, so thank y'all for Dr. Staten's doing a phenomenal job at Valdosta State, and we've also got other members of his leadership team. I see John Crawford up there with the foundation. We've also got our new football coach that we're so proud of, Kerwin Bell. Coach Bell is here. We've got members of the Alumni Association. I think I see Representative Strickland's beautiful wife, Lindsay, here. So they're both VSU alum. Dr. Staten, thanks for all you're doing. Thanks for your leadership. We also, I see my really good friend, Tracy Martin, up there. It's good to see you, Tracy. But thank you to Zachary Lewis that represents VSU for the great bags today. But don't forget to say hello to these folks. I hope you made their breakfast. Don't forget to come to the Depot at 5 o'clock today for the annual Lowndes County Bird Supper. And thank y'all for being here. And I think Chairman Carter wanted to mention one thing.
Let's.
Okay. Thank y'all.
We are not finished with the rules calendar. I was trying to accommodate this delegation. So if you saw members that were running out the back door, you might want to call and tell them to come back home. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 949. House Bill 949.
House Bill 949 by Representative Powell, the 32nd, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Article 3, Chapter 9, and Title 16. The official code of Georgia annotated relating to illegal use of financial transaction cards. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Judiciary Non-Civil. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Powell to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. I bring to you this afternoon House Bill 949. This is a cleanup from last year's bill. Y'all may remember last year I had passed what was called a P-card, credit card bill for local governments. And the gist of what it said then was if the county commissions and city councils and governmental entities elected, they had to set forth a policy about the use of P-cards and credit cards. All of this was because of the bad press that we'd been seeing around the state with county commissioners and elected folks who were using these financial instruments for their own personal gain. They were taking vacations. They were buying all kinds of stuff with it, and it just didn't look good, and it was a splatter over. Y'all might remember my comments at the time that I had somebody over at Betty Bond's old store that caught me one day wanting to know where I was going on vacation on my state P-card. And I had to remind him that, I didn't have a P-card. The state, we don't do business that way. So we passed this bill last year. Well, in the aftermath of passing the bill, there's always a little bit of dust up that comes up in local governments. Your constitutional officers sort of got the feelings hurt about it. The sheriffs, the probate judges, the clerks, and them, they fully acknowledge the fact that they are constitutionally elected officers and they're not subservient to the county commissioners. Now, granted, this doesn't have anything to do with the cities because anybody who works for them falls under those mayors and council members, but just in the counties. So what we've done, because a lot of the constitutional officers didn't want to sign the agreement with the county commissioners, so what we've done with the agreement of the Sheriff's Association and these other associations is we're fixing to put this into law that if they're a constitutional officer, that they also have to adopt, if they use P-cards or credit cards, that they have to adopt the same rules and regulations stating to the employees and their own selves that they can't use a P-card or a credit card for personal purchases. It's bad policy, and I hope this will be the last time I come to you with this bill as a cleanup. So I would sincerely and be grateful for your favorable consideration. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
You have no questions.
then I will sit down and ask for your vote.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on House Bill 949? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 949 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 949. The ayes are 166, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 806. House Bill 806.
House Bill 806 by Representative Tanner of the 9th, to be entitled an Act to amend Chapter 5 of Title 40 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to driver's licenses, so as to provide for the expiration of certain licenses and identification cards issued by the Department of Driver Services. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Motor Vehicles. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Tanner to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 806 that's before you accomplishes two things. Currently in Georgia law, you can renew your driver's license for either 5 or 8 years. In essence, this bill does away with the 5-year driver's licenses, which the hope of that is that'll shorten some of our lines at the Department of Driver Services and allow everyone to have an 8-year license. It does not affect anyone who has a driver's license that is not a U.S. citizen. They're here on a work visa. They will still have to only renew up to 5 years, but no longer than when that visa expires. The second thing that this bill does, which I personally think is extremely important, there's some courts in our state that are sending in traffic citations up to 10 years after the person was adjudicated, and that's resulting in individuals' driver's license being suspended that many years after the actual offense occurred. This sets in law a statute of limitations of 2 years. If the Department of Driver Services receives a traffic citation 2 years or longer after it was adjudicated, it will not have a suspension effect on that person's driver's license. This does not go and affect a commercial driver's license and citations issued because of some things in federal law that we're required to do. But it does not have an effect on someone not becoming an habitual violator. But just a simple suspension, this would set the 2-year statute of limitations. Mr. Speaker, with that, I would ask favorable consideration of House Bill 806, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
You have a question if you care to yield.
I'll be happy to. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Pruitt to your right for a question.
Gentleman yield.
Yes, sir.
I apologize that I didn't get with you earlier on this question, but because we're moving from 5 to 8 years, and I know there's fees associated with getting a new license, will this hamper in any way the amount of money that the driver services takes in, and would it cause us to have to put more money in the general budget for driver services?
I appreciate that question. It averages out to be $4, I believe, a year, whether it's a 5-year or 8-year. We're not changing the fee for an 8-year driver's license. We did look at the cost if we lowered the cost of an 8-year license to the 5-year cost, and that would have resulted in a $180 million deficit in the budget for the Department of Driver Services, so we left the 8-year fee the same. So this is revenue neutral.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No further questions.
I yield the well. Thank you.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill. The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 806 will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 806. The ayes are 168, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. On yesterday's rules calendar, the Rules Committee had put on House Resolution 1363, which was postponed to the next legislative day. Clerk will now read the caption to House Resolution 1363.
House Resolution 1363 by Representative Willard of the 51st and others, a resolution creating the House Special Study Committee on Judicial Qualifications Commission Reform and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Chairman Willard to present the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and realize this is the last piece of business today. I will try to be brief. I know the Speaker's announced he's hungry. I know you're not hungry for power, Mr. Speaker, but this resolution is to give you some authority that this House wants you to have. That is to establish what is called the House Special Study Committee on Judicial Qualification and Commission Reform. If you remember the conversation I had with the House 2 days ago addressed this would be the next matter that would come before you regarding the Judicial Qualification Commission. And it's an extraordinary step this House has taken because there is a need for extraordinary means to do what is necessary with the investigation of this autonomous commission. The purpose of the resolution is to set up a study committee that will be appointed by the Speaker consisting of 7 members, and the purpose of that is to study the conditions, needs, issues, and problems as addressed in this resolution in the whereas categories. The committee is authorized to issue subpoenas of witnesses and documents for purpose of such investigation. And these subpoenas will be issued without first having been prepared. The issues will be issued by being prepared by the Office of Legislative Counsel at the direction of the chairperson of the committee and are required to be signed by the Speaker and attested to by the Clerk of the House. The committee is set up to last for a term of up to 1 year, but the primary thing we'll be doing is preparing a report to bring back to this body to address any specific findings and recommendations that include suggestions for proposed legislation that needs to be done as far as the operation of the Judicial Qualification Commission. You recall the other 2 matters we have. One is a resolution dealing with a constitutional amendment to reform the commission, and the other is a bill that sets up some specific standards of how that commission will be working. Assuming those bills pass and that resolution passes and it's on the ballot, there's need to be sure that what we do covers all the things necessary to keep this commission operating and operating within the bounds of what we consider proper due process. With that, Mr. Speaker, I will ask for the favorable support by my colleagues of House Resolution 1363. If there are no questions, I'll yield the will.
You have no questions.
Thank you for your support.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on House Resolution 1363? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All those in favor of the adoption of the resolution will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the adoption of House Resolution 1363. The ayes are 165, the nays are 2. This bill or this resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. House will continue to be at order. House will continue to be at order. The clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 1215.
House Resolution 1215 by Representative Rogers, the 29th, Williams, the 119th, Dempsey, the 13th, Smyrie, the 135th, Gasway, the 28th, and others. A resolution recognizing and commending Christian Tetzlaff and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Chairman Carl Rogers for an invite resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, each year we always honor the Students of the Year for the Technical Colleges of Georgia. Unfortunately, they went to the lower chamber first, so we had to delay them a few minutes. So I just want to recognize some folks we all need to be proud of. To my right, let me have her first. Stephanie Jackson. She is a Technical College Student of the Year, the 2015 State Gold winner. 2015 graduate of Paralegal Studies at Georgia Piedmont Technical College. In the Technical College system of Georgia, as I said, the Student of the Year. She's best of all the students of from each of the 23 technical colleges. Stephanie chose technical education because she believes it offers flexible, convenient, and affordable education, blending skilled trade with specific to real-world careers. Prior to attending Georgia Piedmont Technical College, Stephanie spent 5 years self-employed as a writer and authored publications such as. Stephanie is the proud mother of 2 sons, and as Student of the Year, she's the state gold winner, and she'll be the ambassador for the technical colleges throughout the state. Next to her right is Justin Walters. You stay there, Stephanie, if you want to. Justin Walters enrolled in adult education because he wanted a second chance at education. In 2013, he enrolled in a program at Georgia Piedmont Technical College that provided him the opportunity to earn a GED and a technical certificate of credit in as little as in 1 semester. Justin received his certificate of welding in May of 2014 and his GED in June of 2014. By this time, he'd chosen teaching as a profession, and he signed up for Early Childhood Care Education Diploma Program. Justin is the Vice President of the College Student Government Association since his selection as the state Eagle winner. This outstanding young man has advocated for adult education across the state. Justin is slated to graduate from Georgia Piedmont this summer. He plans to pursue a bachelor's degree in Georgia State University and ultimately experience the joy of teaching in his own classroom for special needs. Justin will be the first male in his family to graduate from college when he obtains his degree. And next, we always recognize the Instructor of the Year, Christian Tetzlaff. He's the Instructor of the Year. Christian has served as the Motorsports Vehicle Program Director on the Oakwood campus of Lanier Technical College since January 2010. In addition to technical college diploma in motorsports vehicle technology from Lanier Tech, Christian also holds a Bachelor of Business Administration and Master of Education, both from the University of Georgia. He chairs a Complete College Georgia committee. If we will all recognize all 3 of these people, I certainly would appreciate it and welcome them to the House. That's it.
Clerk will read the caption to a group of privileged resolutions. House will continue to be in order. Clerk will read.
Recognizing February 24, 2016 as Physical Therapy Day at the State Capitol, honoring the life and memory of Miss Betty Rowland Voiles. Commending the Police Benevolent Association of Georgia, recognizing its 30th anniversary. Commemorating Howard University's 149th Charter Day celebration. Commending the Leadership Putnam class of 2016. Recognizing March 7, 2016 as Hemophilia of Georgia Day at the State Capitol, honoring the life and memory of Louis E. Gailey. Commending the Boeing Company upon the grand occasion of its 100th anniversary. Commending and recognizing Doug and Vicki Matthews upon being selected as the 2016 Meriwether County Boy Scout Distinguished Citizen of the Year, and for other purposes. That completes the reading of the privileged resolutions.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the privileged resolutions? The chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. We're going on now to announcements. The chair recognizes the Dean of the Georgia House of Representatives, Chairman Smyrie, for an announcement.
Madam Speaker and members of the House, today was Columbus Day at the Capitol, and so we're having, on behalf of the Columbus delegation, we want you to invite you today to a 5 o'clock reception at the depot. And while you're going by Louds County, come on by Muskogee County and see us and our mayor and members of our administration to be there. So 5 o'clock today, the Columbus Depot, come down and say hello to the persons from Columbus, and we'd be delighted to have you in this Columbus Day at the Capitol. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Chairman Alan Powell for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And would the members of the Public Safety Homeland Security Committee, if they could meet right outside in the anteroom, just as soon as you can get out of here or right now. We've got a little bit of housekeeping we need to tend to, and it won't take but just about 2 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Chuck Williams for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Resource Management Subcommittee of Natural Resources and Environment will meet immediately upon adjournment, 4:15 CLOB. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Lynn Smith for an announcement.
Good afternoon, everyone. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock in room 606 CLOB, we'll have Natural Resource and Environment full committee meeting. The agenda could change because one of our subcommittees is meeting this afternoon, so just please pay attention to the announcements. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Golick for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Judiciary Non-Civil will meet today at 2 p.m. in room 132 of the Capitol. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Coleman for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, today at 3 o'clock we have a very, very important Education Committee meeting, so everyone please plan to be there. 606 CLOB, 3 o'clock, Education meeting.
Chair recognizes Chairman Reinders for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon, everyone. Full Governmental Affairs Committee meeting today at 2 o'clock, room 406. 2 o'clock, room 406 of the CLOB. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Chairman Jaspers for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The special rules meeting was scheduled this afternoon has been canceled.
Chair recognizes Representative Kelly for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We'll be having a meeting of the ad hoc subcommittee and Ways and Means on Sales and Use Tax Overpayment upon adjournment just right here. So if y'all come, it'll be a brief meeting. Look forward to seeing you.
Chair recognizes Representative Efstration for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Efstration Subcommittee of the Juvenile Justice Committee will meet at 2 o'clock today. There is a room change. We will be in 506 CLOB. 506 CLOB at 2 o'clock. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Chairman Rice for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The full Motor Vehicles Committee meeting today will be in 406 at 3 p.m. This is the Joshua's Law re-up, so you all be there for that.
Chair recognizes the Chair of the Minority Caucus, Chairman Flood, for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, the House Democratic Caucus will meet in room 230. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Chuck Williams for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm back pinch hitting for Chairman Shaw. The Rural Caucus will meet immediately upon adjournment over in the Ag Building. Immediately upon adjournment, the Southeastern Wood Producers are the sponsors and the program today. Thank you.
We will continue doing page photographs at the rostrum. Immediately upon adjournment, the chair recognizes the Majority Leader of the House for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House stand in recess until 4 p.m., at which time we will stand adjourned until tomorrow morning, Thursday, February the 25th, 2016, at 10 a.m.
The Majority Leader of the House has moved that this House be in recess until 4 o'clock p.m. today, whereupon we will be adjourned until Thursday morning, February 25th at 10 o'clock a.m. All those in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. This House is in recess until 4 o'clock p.m. and then will then be adjourned until 10 o'clock a.m. Thursday,